Good afternoon. Welcome for coming together today to honor and remember our professor and friend, Lance Burton. You will hear remembrances today from President Paul, from Professors Jerry Markley, John Settles, and Laurel Christian, and from current student Scott McLaughlin. Today's ceremony will conclude with the bagpipe playing of Amazing Grace. There is a guest book in the back hallway if you haven't signed it yet. If you would please sign it if you didn't get an opportunity to already. Can you hear me over that? The college will be establishing a student scholarship fund in Lance's honor. So I ask you please consider giving to that fund so that Professor Burton's legacy will continue on with future generations of Mariners. I'm Professor Richard Reed and the current engineering department chair. Lance and I became close several years ago when he was hospitalized and nearly died. We spent quite a bit of time together in prayer during his recovery, which was challenging to him. And we formed a very close bond that's hard to describe in words. But I would say Lance and I became kindred spirits. I think Lance would have liked us to open this time together in prayer. So let us do that now. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gifts of life and friendships that you give to each of us. We are thankful for Lance's impact on our lives, for the ways in which he used his gifts and talents among us to help us, to mentor us, and to bring blessings to us. We know that his first love was his family, his wife and his kids and his parents and his extended family. And we ask for your peace and comfort to them now, O Lord. And we know his second love was teaching here at Maine Maritime. And it showed in his classroom teaching, in his mentoring of his students, and his passion to help anytime and whenever he was asked to help. And we are so thankful, Lord, that Lance was a part of our lives, and we grieve today to think that he will not be among us here at Maine Maritime in the days ahead. But we do hope and pray that our memories of him will endure all the days of our lives. Lance believed in your promises, Lord, promises that you never leave us or forsake us, that precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints, and that nothing can ever separate us from your love, not even death itself. For you promised to be with us as you were with Lance when he walked through the valley of the shadow of death, and you piloted him, Lord, safely into your safe harbor of heaven. We trust in you, O Lord, and look forward to the day when we will meet Lance again and see each other face to face. So today, Lord, may our grief be eased today with tears of our loss of his gifts among us. But may we be encouraged by his example of selflessness and devotion to family and vocation. We ask, O Lord, you would cause each of us to remember with great fondness the things that Lance said or did that helped us along in our own journeys. And we pray for your comfort and peace to each of us and ask that you continue to uphold us with your everlasting arms. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chairman Reed. You know, they say that for every thinking person to have happiness and to have success, they need two things. They need to know in their heart that they do something well and that the thing that they do matters. I think Lance Burton had both of those. I think that explains the smile that you often saw on his face, the smile that I saw again in one of these photos in the slideshow of his graduation picture as a senior. Certainly he was smiling because he was done with this place for a while. We all know that. But it was also his way about him. I also saw it in every one of the photos throughout the stream of his life represented up there, including one that I have in my head, which was just days before he had to depart us here. He had a smile, even though he knew that he faced quite a challenge. He did have happiness and success. You know, Abraham Lincoln once said that I was successful because a friend believed in me and I didn't have the heart to let him down. I remember when I came to Maine Maritime Academy, there were members of faculty and staff who believed in me. I could name off more than a dozen of them right now. And I've thought about them every day since. I think about them every day today, and I don't have the heart to let them down. Lance was one of those people. I know when I came back at all of those that I would list as the friends here who believed in me and that I would not let down, they were all gone. But as I reacclimated myself with everybody that was here, I made a note to myself to pick out who are those people today. And Lance just leaped off the page when I first came in contact with him again. It was actually in a meeting where he and a group of others said, hey, Jerry, do you think we could restart an engineering program? It happened to be the nuclear engineering minor. And I looked around the room, I'm like, I know this guy. I know this guy. And then it occurred to me, well, that's Lance. And then as I rekindled a relationship with him over time since coming back, I recognized indeed that he is one of those people who believes. I look around at these students in the classroom and I can tell that he made an impression on you. He believed in you. I think there are many, many classes of students who aren't here today, maybe who are watching online, for whom Lance Burton, their professor and their friend, believed in them. I think Lance believed in every one of his students and their ability to succeed. I think Lance Burton also deeply believed in Maine Maritime Academy. And I think all of us are here today and online bound by the friendship that we had in him and also in his belief in each of us, in his belief in Maine Maritime. And I have no doubt that as we leave here today, that we will, in the future, be bound by his vision of success for MMA, and I, for one, will not let him down.
Those of you who don't know me, my name is Jerry Markley. I kind of run the steam lab here. It's a live steam plant. I kind of fill in wherever they have a need. When I first started to work, they asked me, what can I teach them? I can teach them to lay brick, I can teach them to cut pipe, I can teach them to weld, I can teach them to retube a boiler. I got a million things. Just tell me what you want me to do. And Lance was kind of the same way. I'd like to read Psalm verse 23, which I've edited. Some went down to the sea in ships, doing business on the great waters. They saw the deeds of the Lord, his wondrous works in the deep. For he commanded and raised the stormy winds, which lifted up the waves of the sea. He made the storm be still, and the waves of the sea were hushed, and he brought them to their desired haven. Lance was born in '66. I was a freshman at Maine Maritime. Class of '69. Lance graduated class in 1990s, and he was one of the first METs. There was a distance in our age. We shared similar views on a lot of things. I was able to point out my experience, different ships, right, and what Maine Maritime was like when I attended here, and what it was like when he attended here. There's some differences, but there was a lot of similarities. The fundamentals of engineering have not changed. We had a lot in common. We dressed alike. American shabby. Now, if you're going to work in the welding lab, you're going to work in the machine shop, you're going to work in the boilers, things like that, it don't pay to wear a suit and tie. And I've had students show up in the day when we had dress whites, and no, out of here, no. Because, students pay a lot of money for these uniforms, and I didn't want them ruined, all right? Lance's experience was nuclear power plants. Mine was on ships, right? We had a lot of differences, but we always came to a consensus and moved on. No sense fighting, losing a time. And one of our concerns was the welfare of the students, especially preparing for the Coast Guard exams. There was kind of a lack of that when we first came here. And him and I got together, a gentleman by Mark Libby, and we started to push and change that. The exam is going to change, and I want the students to be ready. One of the things, if you're a marine engineer, years ago you come ashore and say you were a marine engineer, and like, what does that mean? See? Well, marine engineer, you're going to have to know a lot about basic engineering. You're going to have to know a little bit about everything, and the phrase comes to mind: jack of all trades, master of none. Between the two of us, when we started in the welding lab, we could always keep things working, always things repaired. And then we moved on, right? Lance was a devoted member of the Castine Fire Department. He loved it. I don't know about you, but I fought a few fires and I hated it, right? And I've had a few hair-raising experience. Lance is leaving you a gift. It's what he taught you, or what he instilled in you. He's willing to go the extra mile for any students, and believe me, we had a few we had to drag across the finish line. But it was worth it. It was worth it. And many years later, they come back, and I don't know, I kind of embarrassed my wife one time that in front of everybody, the biggest, baddest member of the football team, graduation, came over, and I didn't know what he was going to do. He was a big guy. He grabbed me and he hugged me, and he said, thanks. And I said, okay, that's good. Let me go now. See? Lance and I shared a lot of stories, and there's a lot that I'm not going to go into. I promised I wouldn't talk too long. And my father taught me this, and I mentioned this to Lance on several occasions. My father said, there will be no statue of me when I am gone. I'm not George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. In a few years, I'll be forgotten by most. But what I have taught you, what I have instilled in you, pass on to the next generation, and this will be my slice of immortality. Thank you.
I am Laurel Christian, part of the engineering department. I first met Lance when I was a sophomore at MMA. I believe the class was Power Equipment Lab. He was just a lab assistant at the time, but I remember the labs vividly. I remember he mentioned that he was new to teaching and that he hated being called Professor Burton, just to call him Lance. His teaching style was deliberate and descriptive, always adding in a sea story here and there. It made the labs memorable. And I passed the class with an A, and it proved to be one of my favorite classes. I remember that my class, as a whole, really loved Lance. When he came into the classroom, he would always be joking with the guys in the back row. He loved to be referencing frosty adult beverages when describing engineering processes or terms, such as power factor, the reactive power being the foam, the real power being the beer. You know, at the end of the day, it's all beer or power. Fast forward a decade later, our paths crossed again. He appeared at my teaching demo when I came to Castine for my final interview. After being hired, he took me under his wing as I shadowed several of his classes. He gave me lecture material, tips and tricks of the trade. Again, his teaching style was enjoyable and entertaining, and he made lecturing look easy. I truly appreciated the time he took out of his day to help me get up to speed and made me feel comfortable as I made my way through my first year at MMA. February 15th, I wrote to Lance via email, letting him know that I would be covering his classes and he would not have to worry about a thing. I told him, don't respond, just to get well soon. We'll figure it out when he gets back. And he did respond that day. He sent me documents and lectures and all the things I would need to finish teaching his steam systems class. And this was a few days after being admitted to the hospital. This act shows that he truly cared about his students. He really wanted to make sure that everybody was set up and ready to go while he was unavailable. It breaks my heart that that was the last response I ever got from Lance. He was really a great teacher, a great friend, and really a legend at MMA, and that we'll miss him.
I'm John Settles, Assistant Professor of Engineering here. Really honored to speak and share a few words and thoughts about Lance Burton. To Lisa and Benjamin and Jennifer, his brothers and sisters, and the rest of his family, really thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. You know, Lance was a husband, he was a father, he was a brother, he was a mentor, he was a teacher, he was a professor. I could probably spend the next 5 minutes really describing who Lance was. But for me, he was a resource, you know. I was sitting in my office several Fridays ago, you know, finishing up some stuff for the week, printing some stuff, reading a few emails, and, you know, I saw an email, you know, sad day today, you know, we lost Lance Burton today. I was kind of in shock, you know, it was really jarring. It was just really jarring. I was in my office by myself. I needed to go connect with somebody. I just couldn't sit there by myself in that grief, so I wandered out in the hall and ran into Thomas, and we just sat there and spent a few minutes just talking about Lance and reminiscing. I called Craig, my good buddy, and of course he didn't answer, but he called me right back, and we just, you know, it was just, we had to collectively share the grief of losing just an excellent soul. Yeah, it was tough. It really hurt. You know, Lance and I were classmates. I was a class of 89. Lance was a class of 90. You know, we weren't best buds, but, you know, you go to Maine Maritime, you get out of here 4 years later, you're friends for life. You know, 35 years later, you call a buddy, and it's like water under the bridge. It's like yesterday you were drinking beers, and no time has passed. And when I accepted this job as assistant professor a year ago in the spring, you know, the next task was to find my family a house because we were moving to Maine. And, you know, the first person I called, he said, hey, call Lance Burton. The next person I called, he said, hey, call Lance Burton. And I talked to a realtor. She said, call Lance Burton. You know, so I thought, wow, Lance Burton, a classmate of mine. Well, a great opportunity to catch up and maybe find a house. You know, we ended up finding a great house. We didn't find the house that Lance got us, but it was that resource that I knew that someone had my family's back here in Castine. And, you know, we found a house, and Lance was always a resource for me. You know, in the first storm we had in December, the power went out at our house, and, you know, my wife's flipping out. For me, it's just an adventure, you know, a couple hours. But I saw Lance in the Andrews Hall, and we talked about the storm, and I said, hey, yeah, we lost power. You know, the first thing he said to me is, hey, I got a spare generator. Next time that happens, just come up and get the generator, you know, and I thought, wow, that's pretty awesome, you know. Yeah, so we were like old friends, you know, we chatted, we connected, we caught up, you know, we're just like old friends. So I parted that call, as I said, knowing that, you know, I had someone looking out for my family and my family's well-being, and as well as after that first storm as well. And I'm clear that what moved me when in my instance of knowing that Lance passed is I just really got this valuable lesson. And the lesson is, you know, there's something about sharing with others, and there's something about connecting with others. And I really got that in my interactions with Lance and the short time that we had to really interact with each other. You know, and there's something, and Lance really embodied those two attributes beautifully. And there's something I've kind of, a little edict I said to myself a long time ago, like you lay your own red carpet. You know, if you're a king or a queen, they lay the red carpet for you. But you go through life and you lay your own red carpet that you got to walk on. I'm just clear that Lance really laid the most wonderful red carpet that I would love to emulate. You know, I've taken on, in fact, a lot of the engineering department, we've taken on his classes because we don't want to leave those students, you know. And for me, it's really an opportunity to bring whatever I can that Lance brought to those students and to fill in and to be that, you know, to be that servant here at Maine Maritime and to provide the same resource that Lance provided. So really it's an opportunity to look within and to, you know, find some attributes for yourself. For me, those are two attributes that are beautiful that I really want to embody. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott McClowan, and I'm a senior in the Marine Systems Engineering program here at Maine Maritime. As we all gather here today to honor Professor Burton, I'd like to take some time to reflect on the positive effect that he had on myself, as well as my friends, classmates, and peers. I was fortunate enough not only to have Professor Burton for some of our STEAM courses here at MMA, but also as a professor in our new Nuclear Engineering Operations course this past fall. As all my friends and family can tell you, they're going to look at me and smile when I say this. I've been fascinated by nuclear power, and more specifically, the nuclear navy, and that is in no small part due to Professor Burton's influence upon me. From our first conversation, I immediately realized that Professor Burton was more than a professor. I think he could better be described as a mentor. Personally, him and I shared countless conversations that covered too many topics to name. However, there was a common theme throughout each and every one of them. No matter the time or place, his enthusiasm to share knowledge and experiences with me never wavered. I'm just one of the many students that shared a similar relationship with him, both past and present. In the classroom, he took every single one of us under his wing and wanted nothing but for each one of us to be successful. With him, you could ask any question, simple or complex, and his answer was always easily understood and effective. He had a way of explaining topics so that you could always understand the why behind his answer. He strived for all of us to become casualty engineers and develop a sense of problem solving that could carry us throughout our entire careers. In every course he taught, this mantra was evident. He had a way of instilling confidence in all of his students, giving us all the skills and mindset to be able to solve any problem. I always looked forward to seeing him around, whether it was during class, anywhere on campus, or even crossing paths in the parking lot. Because no matter the time of day, I knew that I could always learn something new from him whenever we struck up a conversation. All of the lessons that he taught me are invaluable and will stick with me for the rest of my life. I know that many of my classmates feel the same way. At the end of the day, the success of his students was paramount, and every interaction that you ever had with him reflected that. He was able to convey immense amounts of knowledge in an effective way, and you could always apply it to any situation. I consider myself to be incredibly fortunate to have been able to learn so much from him, and I know that all the engineers who were lucky enough to have him feel the same way. He truly was a professor that any MMA student would dream to have. We all miss him dearly, and the lessons he taught us will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes our event today. Thank you so much for coming, and please keep Lisa and the family and Lori and the family in your thoughts and prayers.
Thank